Yeah, you're recording. But okay, good. We are recording.
We are recording.
We are recording Eric Bissell at Beth Chesed. What I don't know what day it is today. It's Shabbos, March 24th? 24th.
You mind if we call it Chesed?
You know, Carol wants me to just do a but Chesed.
Well, if you can.
Some of us, some of us never learned any Deutsch in No Chesed. All right. So let's record and have fun with Eric Bissell. Everybody have a seat again, and let's go.
I've written on here Dr. Jason Lyle, Mandelbrot set. You can find it on YouTube. He's a Christian scientist. The Mandelbrot set is an equation of the way certain numbers relate to each other. It's basically, if you start with 0 and 1 and add them together, you get 1. So now you're starting to make a string of letters, numbers. Now you have 0, 1, 1. If you add 1 and 1 together, you get 2. Then you add the new number to the last number, so you have 2 and 1 is 3, and then you add 3 and 2, and you got 5, and then 5 and 3 is 8, and then 8 and 5 is 11, right? No, 13. And anyway, so it keeps numbers get bigger and bigger. So you just take the next number that you get from adding the previous two, and it's this equation. And they have these computers that now can crunch billions and billions of these numbers like lightning fast, and so they can form this shape, a geometrical shape that looks something like this bug. But the interesting thing is this is kind of an ellipse that is bigger. It might be bigger here and narrower there, kind of like the abdomen of a bug. But the equation necessary to form this curve is slightly different than this curve, which is different than this curve. And the way it all fits together, the computer places it, but the whole thing is microscopically zigzags. And if you zoom in on one of these zigzags, it becomes so complex and more complex. It's infinitely complex. And then all of a sudden you'll find this same bug shape buried deep within the telescope or microscopic view, to the point that you don't know whether that bug shape is the microscopic or the telescopic. And so it's this picture of infinite space. The geometric model of this one little bug found by this equation is a literal model, a pattern of infinite space in both directions forever. And he says, we didn't invent this with some equation. We discovered it coming across this equation of how numbers relate to each other. We found that they form this thing that our computers now, just fairly recently, has been able to stumble across, and it's just mind-blowing. And so I mention it as a form of appreciation, as something like the multiple levels of interpreting or seeing what's in this alphabet. I can show you a few levels. I'll show you one or two here real quick. We don't have time for many more, but I could talk about a bunch of them that you can't see unless you get the first ones. But then after that, man, that's why the rabbis can sit here and study the Talmud for the last 2,000 years, 3,000 years, and still be finding all kinds of more stuff. So here, let me ask you, this is a trick question. I went to a Jewish bookstore in Portland called Everything Jewish, and the guy says, "Oh, what are you looking for?" Well, I'm trying to find a Tanakh, and he said, "Well, why are you looking for that?" And I says, "Well, I'm trying to learn Hebrew, and I'm studying how to read the Tanakh, not the Talmud, but the Tanakh." And he says, "Doesn't the Tanakh tell you to regard the Talmud?" Does everybody know the answer to that question? Doesn't the Tanakh instruct you to regard the Talmud? Does it?
The teaching. Yeah.
No. Not really,
no.
No.
The Lamad.
Why do you say no and you say yes? That sounds like we all of a sudden have a split in the congregation. We're going to have two different denominations.
The Talmud didn't exist until the Middle Ages.
The Talmud didn't exist until the Middle Ages, but she thinks it does.
No, not the Talmud, the Lamad. If they take where it says, the Lamad, the teaching, and they interpret that as the Talmud, then they can get away with it. But it depends on how what you're looking at and how you're looking at
The
it.
rabbis that I talked to regard the Talmud as pre-Moses, that the oral tradition started early, and just continued on through, and then Moses was related to people, and then the rabbis continued on.
Okay, remember this is written right to left. This is Tav, Lamed, Mem, Dalet, Yod, Mem. T-L-M-D-Y-M. Do you know how this is pronounced in English? No, it's disciples.
Yeah, Talmud.
Talmud English.
But it's disciples. Can't you? I'm messing with you.
Uh-huh.
When you take this and you completely change it and say, no, that's disciples, you lose the benefit of knowing that's the word Talmudim. So what they say is, Lamad, that's Lamed, that's that letter. It's a letter that means teach and learn. And if you put a T in front of it, that means you should be doing this. It's like that future tense hasn't been done yet. So if somebody says, doesn't the Torah tell you to regard the Talmud? Certainly it does. Yodevavhe spoke to Moshe, said, speak to Aharon and his sons, saying, boom, right there's the chain of command. Boom, 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 boom. This is how you do whatever he's going to instruct. That's all handed down relay. So for you to say, oh, I think he's talking about the oral teachings of the 15 feet, 30 feet long
Cain and Abel
books from
did
the
a
last...
sacrifice. They knew something about sacrifices.
But what I'm saying is
that
that how we translate this word is going to set us up to see either yes or no. So it's a trick question. And so when this guy says, doesn't it tell you to regard the Talmud? It's like, wait a minute. Every sermon you hear is a teaching.
Yep.
Every song you sing is some kind of a teaching. Every time you read a translation, it's a teaching. Every time we go to church, it's a Talmud. So to think that the Talmud is a bad thing is this convoluted understanding of messing with Christian versus Jew, English versus Hebrew. And I'm just trying to say that's the nature of the whole problem. Definition of terms. What do these words actually mean? So if we go back to the real meaning of the words, how can you do that? And then when you say, well, this is the same word disciple, well, discipline is where you get disciple, is one who has conformed himself to the teaching and behaves accordingly for the sake of a successful product. Well, that's what Lamed is all about. In fact, the word Lamed literally means over and over repetition, which is how you learn, that's how you teach. Same thing over and over again. In fact, there was, just for what it's worth, there's a YouTube site, I guess you call it, called TED Talks. Are you familiar with that? There was a lady talking about how you learn and the brain. She's a doctor up at BC, British Columbia. And she said they thought that the brain used to reach a certain point and then not change unless it degrades. But now they've found it's not that at all. The brain keeps changing, developing, and they have ways to photograph neural synapses. She can show you these dendrites, and they actually reach out and wiggle and make it connect, and then disconnect. That's somebody having a thought that the brain works as like this incredible computer, and as you learn things and as you rehearse things, they'll make these connections and not necessarily come apart right away, but they'll solidify, and that your brain is constantly building these bridges or these connections, vaving, you might say, connecting together. And learning a foreign language is one of the best ways to develop parts of your brain that have never been developed before and to lock it in. And so what I'm saying is, for him to say, Lamed, teach and learn my things to your kids, not only are you going over them, but your kids teaches is rehearsal. And so, at Pesach, tell the story. Well, nobody wants to hear the story. Okay, tell you what. Eat unleavened bread for a week. What's up with the stupid unleavened bread? Well, your kids are going to ask that question. Why do we have to eat unleavened bread? Then you'll tell them the story, and in so doing, the Torah will be in your mouth. So the Torah, maybe on some hand, in some regard, is nothing more than telling the story. You tell the story of the Exodus, the Torah will be in your mouth. It has to happen. So now we're going to set up this little ritual of eating unleavened bread. Why Chag HaMatzot? The word matzot, mem zadi vav tav. The word spelled matzah, mem zadi hey, has to do with the leaven, but this is also mitzvot, the same spelling. Why should mitzvot? That's a type of law. That's an instruction, a mitzvot. What has it got to do with matzah? This word also means find out how to do something. If you go to the encyclopedia, if you go to the instruction manual to find out how to do something, that's the same exact word as him giving us instructions. So again, depending on how you translate the spelling of this 4-letter word, and so from somebody says, we don't need to do that. You're taking the thing that he had implemented as the vehicle by which you'll get where you're headed, which is being aware, healthy, wealthy, and wise, and saying, here, I've implemented this instruction of eating unleavened bread for a week. Why? It doesn't matter, we're not under the law, blah, blah. This is just a what if, physiologically speaking. What if he who created the universe knows that in the springtime, when the fungus spores are proliferating and blossoming, that if we didn't eat yeast product and even have it in our environment for 1 week, it would recalibrate the yeast microbiological system which is within us and set us up for being healthier for the entire year.
That's interesting.
Wouldn't he do something like that? I would expect him to. And then for him to tell his people, don't have yeast anywhere in your premises, don't even walk into the bakery where the yeast is in the air, just stay away for a week. And while you're doing that, you'll be finding out how to do something, which is to shema, to pay attention how to live. And if we say, we don't need to do that, okay, you'll suffer the consequences. It's not a sin like you're going to go to hell with. Excuse me?
So much more than bread of life.
So much more. What I'm saying is that if we could dare to believe that there was a good reason, whether it was spiritual or insightful or physiological or even to the extremity of transverse options of heaven and hell, there's probably all those reasons to simply do what he said. So the question was what did he say? So, this thing about the Mishkan pattern. Can anybody tell me right off the top of your head, what did he make in Genesis chapter 1 on day 5?
Fish and birds.
Did everybody know that, or were you stumped for a moment? You didn't know?
Well, I couldn't remember. No.
Why?
Fish and birds.
No, wait a second. Why do you suppose it wouldn't just come to your mind?
I have not memorized.
Why?
I agree with that.
What's that? I'm sorry, miss.
If you had asked me early this morning, I might have had the answer. It's a little late in the day.
Yes.
Well, here, I'll answer the question for you. The reason why you don't remember, because it just doesn't matter. Okay, so I can say what does matter is that this universe was created by an intelligent source, right? Intelligent design. Who it was is a different matter. How he did it is another matter. And if he had a certain registered to-do list, top of the list, next, that's even further down the list of what does it matter. So we don't know. We don't care. It doesn't matter. We just know that he created it and we're on with the more important things, right? But that's not right. It makes all the difference in the world. What he made on day 5 is critical. I'll show you why. So in the Mishkan, he said, there's this big white fence. Now, there's a certain fellow, Andrew Hoy, if you go to, like, pi is 3.14, so if you go to project 314 or 314 project, he's this architect, he's over in Wisconsin, engineer, he believes that the Mishkan may have been round, not rectangular.
Oh, I've heard that.
He's the guy, Andrew Hoy. So, but anyway, I just draw it square because that's the way I've been doing it, rectangular, and I'm just going to run with that for the moment. Anyway, the 4-color door on it. So here, there's a big white fence. Then he gives us certain dimensions. That's the first thing that he tells us about. Then inside the fence, there's a barbecue grill, and it's got these horns on the corners. And then there's a laver with water in it. And then there's the set-apart place. So there's kind of a break here. This is outside. So inside this Mishkan, if we drew an aerial view, here's the gate coming in. And then there's the barbecue grill. And then there's the laver. And it says this was halfway between. So that now there's this covered place. So this is halfway. And it says this barbecue grill was right inside the gate. So here, let's picture that this room is stepping into the fence. Here's the door. That wall is the covered place, and it was probably pretty close to this size, I think. And so the laver would be right about here, which is halfway. So somewhere between stepping in the fence and there has to be this barbecue grill, where they sacrifice all these hundreds and hundreds of animals. Could have been real big, but how many feet inside this door, if he said it was right inside the door, how many feet in do you think it was? 2 steps, maybe, if it was
3,
here?
maybe.
3?
You gotta have room to slaughter the animal and lay your hand on it
So-
in front of it.
So maybe you'd slaughter the animal where this chair is, and maybe right there is the barbecue grill, because right here, a few steps away, is going to be the laver, and then right over there, the covered place. Now, inside the covered place, there was a menorah, table of showbread, altar of incense, and this veil, and then the Ark of the Covenant. So we have the menorah. And I draw the table of showbread like this because it was this rectangular table, and it had 2 piles of 6 loaves. Of course, they draw pictures of these racks with all the loaves on the racks, which is different, but he seems to indicate whatever that looked like, 2 piles of these 6 loaves. And then there was this altar of incense, which was square, and it had the incense going off it. And then there was this veil, and then there's the Ark of the Covenant. And so it was this rectangular box, and it had these Malachim wings where they were kind of, so just quick little blitz is all I'm drawing. Okay, so that's the pattern of the Mishkan. Now the Seventh-day Adventists make a big deal about the Mishkan, and they talk about Christ in the tabernacle, and they have their whole way of reading this. And it's like, I remember years ago hearing their stuff, and it's like, well, that seemed interesting, but we're not even going to go there, just so you know, we're not even going to go there. But when he says Tabanit, Tav, Bet Nun Yod Tav, this word Beni is my son. And I believe that Yeshua, the guy that lived 2,000 years ago, is his son. And there's something about Yeshua which is in this pattern of the Mishkan. Now, if I tell you the days of creation, the first day he said, let there be light. And he separated the light from the dark. Now, the particular staging of the Mishkan, it was out in the wilderness. Out in the fields of the wilderness. It was probably pretty dark out there. And there was this pillar of fire and pillar of billowing smoke when his presence was there that I think would kind of have lit up this big white fence like a lampshade. So it would be glowing like a light in the middle of the darkness. That's kind of what I'm picturing. Okay, then on day 2, he separated water from water. And here, when they brought in a sacrificial animal, the first thing they did was separate its life from its body, then separate the blood from the carcass, then separate the entrails, and separate out the dung, and separate out the bones and the flesh, and then put it where the fat dripped through. It's all a matter of processing and separating. This has to do with day 3, where he separated water from land, and then into the land he spoke seed, right? He said there was plants. But yet in Genesis 2, he says, Well, before the man was there, the plants hadn't sprouted because there was no rain and no man to water. So if he put plants on the earth, it was at least seeds. You always see pictures that on day 3 there was this flourishing vegetation, but was it? I'm just trying to look at the words. I'm not sure. And then on day 4 is sun, moon, and stars. So this is what we use to regulate time. But here he said there was light. So was there time yet? What kind of light? If sun, moon, and stars was the source of light, what was this kind of light? Aleph, Vav, Resh.
Well, there was no man until day 6 to see if there was time or if there was what kind of light or anything. There's no witnesses as far as human witnesses. All we have is what he told us.
Here he mentions on day 1, there was evening and morning, day 1. Well, if there's evening and morning, that has to do with time, right? Not necessarily.
Maybe.
He didn't actually say there was evening and morning.
No.
And time is relative depending on where you are.
If you're in Jupiter, a day is different than if you're on Earth.
So
So when I said that he didn't necessarily say evening and morning, what do you know about that?
I only know that when there is sun, moon, and stars, we have a regulation of time, and what we're doing and what he did, and not what we're doing, but what we're living in, is not in eternity, but within space and time.
Does everybody know what she said by that?
No.
It's a little vague. But
That's vague. Okay.
well, here let me back up a little bit. When he said, "Let there be light,"
Mhm.
and then it says he separated the light from the dark, called the light good. And then he says, "Vayehi erev, vayehi boker,
Right.
yom echad." Okay, Vayehi erev is translated,
Yeah.
there was evening.
There was even-
When he says Yehi or, that is translated, "Let there be light."
Mhm.
But he said the same word Yehi for light as he did for erev.
Right.
Va Yehi erev.
Right.
Did he say, "Let there be evening"? No, it's translated, "There came to be evening."
Mhm.
How did there come to be evening? The world wasn't necessarily spinning because there was no time
Right,
with the sun
exactly.
shining on one side to have there be
There
an
wasn't
evening
any
yet.
control of time.
Then what was the evening?
I don't know.
Trick question. The word Erev is not evening.
Darkness.
The word
Twilight.
Erev is translated evening.
mixture.
Mixture.
Oh, that's right, that's right.
So,
Dawn comes,
An Arab, the Arabs.
right.
That would be twilight, right?
I forgot
Erev,
about that.
Shabbat, twilight. we had-
here's the interesting
It's a
thing.
mixture of.
If anybody is an artist, have you ever tried to do an airbrush?
Hmm.
You have a saturated color here and a saturated color there, and if you want to blend them, you have to make the transition such that you never see a hard line of distinction.
Right.
So you fade.
Mhm.
And the better the fade, the less distinguished the transitional moment is, right? That's the word Erev.
Right. I know. I
It's
remember
this
now.
blending. It's also a swarm of insects, so you can't see one in
Right.
particular. It's just
They're
constantly
all
just.
mixed.
So if he said there's light and there's dark, and then he caused there to exist, the word is Ivdal Elohim, Bin Ha'or, Ibn Ha'hosek, Ivdal, Yod, Bet, Dalet, Lamed. Here's Lamed, there's that authority. Here's the door, and here's Bet means, it could be translated as on, and here's a hand. Okay, look at that door. Where is there a hand thing which is the authority on that door?
Doorknob.
The doorknob. What does the doorknob do? It allows one to enter or not enter. Okay, so if he put some kind of authority or a doorknob on the interaction between light and dark, and he said there will be mixture, and there, does anybody know what boker means? It means morning, but what else does it mean? Split apart. It's the word for to plow open the earth. In fact, boker is also the word for ox. You ever heard of buckaroo? It comes from the Spanish word vaquero, because the B and V, like in Hebrew, is the same letter. So you got vaquero, buckaroo. And buckaroo is a cowboy. A vaquero is a cowboy. And it's also the plowing animal that pulls the plow and splits open the earth. It also means to investigate or examine, where you pull something open and scrutinize and look into it. It's all the same word. So if he said he made light and then he made dark, and then he made two authorities of gatekeeping, of engaging interaction between these two opposites, in carpentry you have something called a finger joint. Multiple surface layers to glue. It's a very strong joint. You have a butt joint where something can just be pulled apart because there's less surface area. So night and dark, blending, abutment, breaking where you can open it. That's a Rev invoker, right here.
Cool.
Where's evening and morning? The word evening is where you even out the dark and the light, so you get the twilight. But we think, no, that's at 6 p.m. or that's when the sun is. We've changed the meaning because we have to make it practical. But by making it practical, we've missed what he said. So what I'm saying is, I'm not saying, well, gee, you shouldn't regard a certain time. What I'm saying is, if you want to investigate the language, you have to get past the translation and look at what he said. So if he said he made light and dark, and there's mixture and split apart, and then on day 2 he separated water from water. There's this guy named Greg Volk who's towards the east somewhere, I forget where he lives, but electron physicist, all dealing with the energy in water, and that everything has to do with electromagnetism, holding the hydrogen atoms at a certain angle of both attraction and repulsion to the oxygen atom to make water. And everything's held in this stasis because of exactly the tensions electromagnetically of the electrons and the protons. And that's the basis for everything that exists, of all the elements on the periodic table, and that's the basis of how everything is made. The separation of water from water is all about electromagnetism. So is mixture, which is attraction, and breaking apart, which is the repelling. So there's one way to look at least these first 3 days before he made time, that there's something about setting up the physics of the universe with chemistry and mathematics, system formulas. But we don't read that if we're just reading what he made. Day 3, when he put seeds into the earth, that's using earth stuff and putting them in such a way. I tried to research what makes a seed sprout. You can find a seed that's been in like one of the pyramids for 10,000 years or 6,000 or whatever. Pull it out, and it's still just a seed. You put warmth and moisture, and there's something about putting it in the earth too, because whatever effect the earth has. And it says that the best I could find on the internet information is that, well, it does something towards energizing I think it's the amino acids. And then suddenly life happens. But the scientists don't know why. They don't know what causes a seed to suddenly come to life. It can be held as a dead, as it were, non-living seed for thousands of years. And as soon as you put a certain environmental condition, bam, there's life. There's a message there, and it has to do with this. This place right here, there's a message about how that seed works. Okay, sun, moon, and stars the next day, and then you got a picture like scales of balance, or like a seesaw, a teeter-totter, right? And you've got, depending on judgment, if you go down, that's like maybe, it's just a kind of sort of picture of heaven and hell, right? Repercussions of blessing and curse. Day 6, there was animals and man. And this is Yom HaShabbat, right? So I'm lining them up to the Mishkan because there happens to be 7 pieces to this Mishkan. Now there was other stuff. There's a couple curtains and this and that. But the basic articles are those 7. Now he gave us Moedim. And in Leviticus 23, he says, these are my appointed times. Mikra Kodesh. The appointment is also to come together and congregate. But this word mikra, mem kuf resh aleph, if you look at the word for Leviticus, it's va'ikra, vav and yod kuf resh aleph. Does anybody know what kara means? Call, invoke, summon, assemble, but what else? Learn how to read the scripture.
Oh.
It means to happen to be invited to assemble to learn how to read. Right there in the dictionary. That's what we're doing right now. So it means a couple different things, and it's like, learn how to read what? Well, the first verse of Vayikra has a small little aleph. It's one of the jots and tittles thing. And so my thinking is that, well, you could not only learn how to read, but maybe that sets it up so that Vayikra, what does the word ikur mean? Like if you drop the aleph. It means to raise in value, to be regarded as precious, dear, costly, treasured. If you learn how to read scripture, suddenly it becomes, instead of some trivial, common thing, it becomes this precious treasure because you've finally realized what's in this. And if he calls us to set yourself apart from what's happening with the rest of your life on Shabbat, on the Kodeshim Yomim, the days of Kodesh, sacred, pull yourself away and get together and learn how to read. How many people sit around on the Moedim days and learn how to read? It's like, there's great reward in doing it because that could be read as that's exactly why he's giving us that. Why should we learn how to read? Well, look at Pesach. They were in the darkness of slavery in Egypt, and he called them into his place where he says, you're my people now. I bought you. I paid for you. I pulled you out of that crucible of affliction. Mitzar means there's rock in a hard place of affliction. And now you're mine. Out of the darkness into light, that's like the big white fence, that's like day one. Do you see the thematic parallel? Okay, day two, Chag HaMatzot, eat unleavened bread for a week. That's like separating water from water. That's like the barbecue grill. That's like finding out how to do something. Just follow this simple little instruction because there's a story, there's a deeper thing embedded within the story, and if you just follow the story as an instruction, then you'll see this greater stuff. You'll find out how to be my people. And just like Pesach being this gate right inside, you got the evening of Pesach, and then boom, right within hours, boom, there's Chag HaMatzot. It's right inside, just like a picture of just inside the door, there's this barbecue grill. And then, right on the heels of the barbecue grill, you've got 50 days of counting for Shavuot. Now, some people will say there's two festivals. There's the wave sheaf, that's one festival. 50 days later, there's another festival, the wave of the loaf. But if you look real close, I believe that it's one 50-day festival. It happens to start with this mandatory observation, count 50 days, that's the festival, counting, and then there's this other feast at the end. But it's one-day festival, just like a pregnancy, like an incubation or gestation period. And if you think of that being one festival, now we have 3 spring feasts, all connected together. And then in the fall, Yom Teruah, Yom Kippur, Sukkot, and because this was one festival, not two, Shemini Atzeret, the 8th day, becomes the 7th festival. But if this is 2, you lose Shemini Atzeret. You've changed the teeth on the key, and you're not going to see what this opens up if you have the wrong tooth pattern. So my thinking is that because this is one festival of 50 days, and not 2, then it's not one of the fall feasts, and so that way there's still 7, but Shemini Atzeret is the valid last festival, the closing festival. The 8th day. Sukkot's only 7, it's the 8th. Okay, so it lines up with the festivals, it lines up with the Mishkan, it lines up with the days of creation. I can show you the Beatitudes. He says, blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Now, what's the poor in spirit? Those that are in the darkness that feel their poverty. They're sick, they're weak, nothing seems to be working right. Those are the ones compelled to call out for the kingdom reality. If you're cruising with all the good stuff and have no need of changing anything, don't mess up a good thing, you're not going to call out for the kingdom of heaven, which is why it's easier to pull a rope through the eye of the needle or a camel, depending on how you translate it, than for a wealthy man to get in. So we might want to thank him for our afflictions, tough as that might be. But the point is, he's offering us the kingdom of heaven. That's what Yahushua said. So now suddenly I can take that verse and lay it on top of this pattern and say, well, then that big white fence must represent the entire kingdom of heaven, because it's used in the context of an overlay of that verse. So I'm going to say this is the kingdom, and not just of heaven, but there was 4-color embroidery. You got blue, purple, red, and then it says there was white linen. Gee, there's 4 things. Why should there be 4? Gee, what else has 4? Tetragrammaton has 4. How might that line up with blue, purple, red, white? The hand, Yod, the hand of the Creator, if that's blue, then it's like, well, that's the hand of the authority. He said, have a blue thread. You'll remember that I told you these things because I made this place. I know how it works. And then you'll do it and you'll get blessed. When Moshe and the elders were up there, they saw the sapphire blue, which is basically like a blue sapphire floor in his throne room, like a mosaic. So it's kind of saying the authority of he who fit everything together is represented by this blue. Okay, that's like a Yod, the hand of the Creator, blue. Purple, we think of, well, what do you think of when you hear the color purple? Royalty. So the royal decrees of, now let's suggest there's 4 ways, just because there's 4, let's suggest there's 4 ways that the Creator has declared, revealed, communicated himself to humanity. It says the heavens declare the glory of Elohim, but the royal decrees are what? The Torah? So if this purple represents the Torah, what's the 3rd way he revealed himself in communication with his creation that has to do with red? Blood, red, well, that's Adam, that's man, that's Yahushua, right? Yod, Hey, Vav, Shin, Ayin, Yahushua. He came as the Mashiach in that form. So, and when he left, he said, I'm not going to leave you alone, but I will send you the Ruach. And why? What's the Ruach going to do? Lead us into the truth. So, if this is white linen, what does white linen represent symbolically?
Purity.
Purity. So if you were to walk in pure truth, well, now we have Yod, Hey, Vav, Hey. The one who made the world and gave us his Torah came down here as a man to walk out and illustrate, leave us his Ruach to walk in the ways of Torah. But Hey equals Hey. So the Ruach has to agree with the Torah because Hey equals Hey. And then if I show you a picture of the Psalmic at Paleo, or the menorah, or a person with this kind of a winged, that's kind of like the Vav with these 2 Heys on display, like 2 witnesses validating the authentic word of truth. So the Vav, Yod, Hey, Vav, Hey, just graphically I could, say, well, here's a Vav and here's a Hey, and here's the other Hey, like these wings. And it's like both these Heys have to agree with each other and have to validate the testimony of that Vav, or that Vav's a liar. And Yeshua said, I only do what I see my Father doing and hear my Father saying, so that Vav has to be the articulation of that voice. And these voices both have to validate him, because otherwise he's a liar. So now you have 4 voices, all of which has to confirm each other, or else we know that something's wrong. So the way that I can know for sure whether we're right in what we believe and what we do is if what he built into creation, which happens to be 2 genders, not 64, so boop, those guys are wrong. What he said in the Torah is what Yeshua did and said, which is also what the Ruach has to validate. So if somebody says, well, the Holy Spirit told me that I don't have to keep the words of this Torah, it's like, Something's wrong. Hey is not equaling hey. The two witnesses can't agree. So I don't have to believe that doctrine unless I can reconcile the discrepancy. Because that's what his name can be read as. So if this is the blue, purple, red, and white embroidery, then I can choose to believe that there's something about those colors which are voices which all have to agree with each other to make me know that, okay, GPS is triangulation. Somebody's saying if you're like in the air or space, you need quadrangulation, 4 different reckonings to place where you are. And it's like, we're floating around out here in the universe. He gave us 4 voices for us to know exactly where we are in proximity to the kingdom of heaven. Isn't that coincidental?
Amen.
So the colors on the door, I can read that as his name to give me the bearing on exactly whose kingdom, where it is, and how do I get in. But you can't just go charging in because we're defiled. We've been in contact with the dead. The skull and crossbones motif out here is like, well, then who can break that seal and let us in? Yeshua was crucified outside the gate. Not to stir up a controversy, but, Yochanan the Immerser said something about the Lamb of God that takes away the sins of the world. I don't remember, can somebody show me the verse where it says that the Messiah, anywhere in the Tanakh, the Messiah is going to come and take away the sins of the world? Or that the Messiah is a sin offering? Or that Passover is a sin offering? Does anybody know what that is? You won't find it. It's not there. Why? Why anywhere in the Tanakh it does not say the Messiah is going to come and die as a sin offering? It does not say that the Passover lamb take away anybody's sins. It does not say that the Egyptians were killed because they were sinners and the Israelites were forgiven because they had blood. It had nothing to do with any of that. So then how can he be the Passover lamb that takes away the sins of the world?
Well, it says it was hidden, doesn't it? Somewhere say that.
But there's nothing clearly saying. Why would he hide it if it's that important? If he's going to hide something, you can hide a treasure, but why would he hide the necessary mandate of getting into the kingdom of heaven for any man who walks the face of the earth? Did Abraham believe the Messiah was going to come and die? Did David believe the Messiah was going to be crucified? I've heard it said that they did, but I can't find a single verse anywhere that says so. So that whole thing looks like Christian mojo, which is why the Jews say it ain't so. That's why. That's why there's a problem between Judaism and Christianity. So where is it written that the Messiah is going to die?
Well, Isaiah 53 says, 53:10 says that it pleased Yod-Heh-Vaveh to bruise him.
Who bruise who?
Him?
Him who?
It pleased Yod-Heh-Vaveh to bruise him.
Him who?
Speaking of the Messiah.
No, where does it tell us that's talking about the Messiah?
Okay, speaking of him, speaking of the servant, if you go back to 53. Anyways, it's speaking of the servant.
Which servant? You're a servant, aren't you?
I'd like to hope.
Israel is supposed to be his firstborn, besides of which his servant. Okay, you're never going to find it. It doesn't say. That's what I'm telling you, it doesn't say. In other words, we've been told that clearly it says certain things, which clearly it hasn't. It's cryptically alluded to, but if you don't know the ins and outs of how to read Hebrew and know how to mess with the stories, you'll never see it. So that's why when the Christians say to the Jews, it says clearly your Messiah is going to come and die. It does not. Now Yeshua, when he rose from the dead, walking with his friends on the road to Emmaus, he sits there and he's talking with them and he's pointing all the way back to the beginning and saying, this was a cryptic way of analyzing what was going to happen to the Messiah. They go, what? Really? What was it? And then all of a sudden they realize, oh, that's him, and poof, he disappears. He's saying, wow, what? Why doesn't he tell us clearly? And this is what there's a guy named Tovia Singer. He's known as the anti-missionary guy. I think he's from New York. But the point is, he's very vocal about this. And the reason I'm bringing it up is like, don't say anything about that. Don't topple a house of cards. What we believe ought to be built on a solid foundation. No house of cards. Don't let the wind blow it and knock it all down. And when the Christians say something's clear and it's not, and when somebody goes to investigate it and they can't find it, like, and the first person who brought this kind of thing to my attention is, show me the Bible verse where the authorized Kadosh day was changed from the 7th day to the 1st. You know where that is?
No.
Yeah,
Revelation, they
It
claim.
doesn't exist.
yeah,
Day of the Lord.
the
It doesn't
vicar.
say.
What is the day of the Lord?
Vicar of
Well,
Christ.
The what?
Vicar
Yom
of
Adonai,
Christ
which is
supersedes
Judgment
God.
Day.
The Pope changed the day. And I've heard Catholic radio say, those stupid Protestants think they're so smart. Oh, sola scriptura, only scripture. And they said, it's not written anywhere about the first day, sola scriptura, that says the Sabbath day. So every Protestant who keeps Sunday instead of Saturday as a holy day bows the knee to the Pope, and they're too ignorant to even know it. So the Catholics disparage the Protestants for being stupid fools, though they're saying one thing and doing another. And it's like, oh, really? Are we that ignorant and gullible? So what did it say?
Yes, we are.
Where does it say that guy who I claim to be Yodeh Vav Shinai and Yeshua, that I say is in this pattern, where does it say that he will be a sin offering if the Passover lamb was not for sin?
Well, I know in the Akedah, in Abraham and Isaac, Abraham prophesied and said God himself will provide a lamb.
People call that a prophecy, but if you look at the immediate event, was he prophesying? He's talking to his son. It wasn't a prophecy. It could be read as a prophecy years later. But
I'm
in the
saying it's a
moment,
prophecy. I don't care what anybody else says. I'm saying it's a prophecy.
well, but I'm trying to make a point. I'm not trying to say you're wrong, but what I'm trying to say is, if you already believe that Yeshua is the Messiah, you can look back at that and say, it was a prophecy. But if somebody says, where am I going to sit? And somebody says, God himself will provide you a chair. And I come here and all of a sudden somebody says, here, why don't you sit here? I say, oh, was that a prophecy of the Messiah? No. What I'm trying to say is, when a guy like Tovia Singer says, you damn Christians, you're sending our Jewish children to hell with your Elohim Achrim, your gods of others, shut up and stop it. Those are serious words. Those are fighting words. That's what brought on stuff like the Crusades and the Inquisition. Is he right? Yeah, unfortunately he's right. But here, let me tell you, I'll show you where it says who Yeshua was. I'll show you because it's right there in that alphabet. That's the scripture where it's written. And if you don't know the alphabet, you don't know that question. But I'm telling you, you can't find the verse. It alludes to it in the Akedah. It alludes to it, Isaiah 53. It alludes to it, Psalm 22. And the people who say, like the Jewish leaders who say Isaiah 53 is talking about Israel, it's not talking about the Messiah. It never claims to be the Messiah. Are they right? Yeah, kind of. What about Psalm 22? Like a lion, my hands and feet. Well, it doesn't say it was pierced and say, What I'm saying, I will show you clearly. I'm trying to tell you these things to give you confidence.
What about, sorry, no one mentioned it, what about Genesis 5 within the names?
The guy that named his son this, and then the next guy named him from that, didn't know what the third or the fourth guy was going to name his sons. It's only in retrospect afterwards that we can look back.
Sure.
In retrospect, you can make anything fit. I'm trying to show you the proof from before the beginning.
Well, it says that he was slain before the foundations of the world.
And
How did he know that?
I'll show you what I think that means. I'll show you that.
Oh.
Okay, so here's the point. If the blue, purple, red, and white is us entering in the kingdom, then the stuff inside this can't be seen from outside, it's only from inside. And for Yeshua to be put to the crucifixion outside, at least he brings us into the kingdom because we are unworthy on our own account. We can't cleanse ourselves. He gave us protocols for offering sacrifices, but that was to the Israelites on the inside. The people that are outside, messing around with the death and destruction and the darkness, have no availability to any of the sacrifices that he gave to Israel. That was an exclusive thing. And if I say that the mitzvot, the instructions, are on the barbecue grill inside, if you don't enter that kingdom, you don't know what they are. So if somebody like the SDA say, well, if you don't keep the Sabbath day, you can't be saved, it's like, you don't even know the Sabbath day until you come in and read the instructions. So how can you keep the Sabbath day to come in and be saved? It doesn't fit the pattern. It doesn't make any sense. What does this mean? The laver, water. Let me show you some letters. A big white fence is the letter Het. The alphabetic sequence is Het, Tet, Yod. And to cut to the chase here, I'm going to say this is Kaf and Lamed. Now the letter Kaf is an open hand or lines of instruction like the Torah, and the Lamed means teach and learn. So I can equate the Torah of the Hey of Yod He Vav Hey. This is like the big white fence of the hand of the Creator. Yod is like, the Tet is a round thing, almost like a branding iron, and the Yod is a hand that says, this is mine. So like the colors of him saying, this is my kingdom. I'm the guy that created the heavens and the earth. This is my place. I rule here. That's a way to read Het Tet Yod. Kaf and Lamed, which is all, and read it backwards, Lamed Kaf is to you, for you, this is all that I have to empower you, to give you the instructions, and the only way for you to get the instructions is to come into the kingdom and lay your stuff down and filter through to learn my instructions of how it works in here. Because the way it works out there doesn't work the way it is in here. And as soon as you step into the kingdom, stop right there and lay your stuff down, throw yourself, as it were, on that altar of sacrifice, and learn my ways. The next two letters are Mem, Nun, which is what, where, but also what, where. It lines up with separating water from land and putting in the seed. Well, Yeshua said the seed is the word. And where does the seed go? In your heart. The laver is made out of the mirrors of the women, which is kind of like this reflection of yourself, this introspection. So to take his matters of his Torah to your innermost heart and contemplate and reflect on yourself and be transformed according to his model and image and character and face. Well, that's what we're supposed to be doing. And he constantly criticized Israel for not taking his matters to heart, not believing him. Oh yeah, we have that pretense of religion doing the sacrifices, but he said your heart was far from me. Remove the barrier of your heart. It's translated circumcise your heart. Remove the barrier of what is alienating your heart from my words. So Mem Nun has to do with us taking his matters to heart. And these are the spring festival, Shavuot, counting 50, and birthday, 50 days later, Yovel, Jubilee. What births? What's the next thing? A menorah, lining up with blessed are the poor in spirit, for it's the kingdom of heaven. You step inside and all of a sudden you realize, gee, it's a different world than I had ever anticipated, and what have I done, and who am I, and oh gosh. Blessed are they who mourn, sure they shall be comforted. Why should you mourn? When you finally step into the kingdom and realize all the years you wasted and all the money and people that you've hurt. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. This is the day he brought forth the earth, and seed has to do with inheritance. Blessed are the ones who hunger and thirst after righteousness, for they shall be filled. What lines up with Yom Teruah? You fill the trumpet with air to produce the fruit of sound. You fill the menorah with oil to produce the fruit of light. So here you have this voice and this sound of righteousness for those who are hungry. Why are they hungry? Because they've taken his Torah to heart, because they stepped into his kingdom, because they stepped out of the world. And then he says, as you're doing this righteousness, remember, blessed are the merciful, because like scales of balance, with the measure you use, it's measured to you. As you impart mercy to one another, you become mishpat, balance scales, deserving of mercy to be put on you. With what goes around is going to come around, so be careful how you judge. Give mercy, love mercy, look for opportunities for mercy, because then you set up this gestation of seeds and bearing fruit. The ayin lining up with this looks like an eyeball, but it's a seed, it's a fruit with a seed in it. The menorah looks like the vine and the branches of doing what he said. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see Elohim. The pure in heart, this lines up with the letter Pei, which is the open mouth, which has to do with the prayers of the saints, with Sukkot, which is fellowshipping in his word. And there's this veil, like the Sabbath day set apart, like Shemini Atzeret set apart. So here you've got one day and then the 7, and here you've got like this bookend, 7 days and then the 1. This is lining up with the Zadi, which was the sprout of Aaron's rod that has to do with the resurrection. So Yeshua, who was entombed for 3 days and 3 nights, so these 3 work together because they're inside that part of the Mishkan. These 2 letters work as that, and these 2 letters, so it's graphically, symbolically what I'm saying. Here's a picture of Yeshua being entombed 3 days and 3 nights, and then resurrecting, and then after this letter Kuf, which is to rise up, he ascended, and then The Melachim said he's going to come back the same way, to the same place. Well, what comes after Kuf? Resh Shin Tav. Rosh is the prince. So Sar, Sar Shalom, but Rosh is the head, the first, the greatest, the archetype. When he comes back as the Resh man, the first half of this, can I write on this?
Yeah.
Oh, please do.
Okay, here, if you come back to the beginning of the alphabet, Aleph is a prefix letter. It basically means I am or I will. The letter Bet of Bereshit. It starts with Bet because the Aleph is silent. So it means to house or embody. So here's the physical universe, as it were. Gimel is a voyager. Modern Hebrew has the foot. It's the camel, the one going back and forth like some sort of transient ambassador. Dalet, you could say, well, that's number 4, but it kind of speaks of earth. So you have summer, winter, spring, fall, earth, air, fire, water, solid, liquid, gas, plasma. This fourness, the tetra thing, speaks of earthiness and kind of this symbolic thing. And I don't know who came up with that, but I'm just saying that if you think of that as the earth thing, Hey is to reveal. I'm trying to go fast here in the interest of time. So, and here you have Vav, a man, and here you have Zion, a weapon. And then you've got the Het, which is this fence, and Tet, which is the round, like a round basket. They say it's snake, but it's not snake. That's Nachash. It's something round, like snake's coil, and so that snake is a picture of Tet, but Tet isn't snake. And then you've got Yod, which is this hand, which is grabbing hold of, so it's a forceful hand. So here's the point. Where is it written that guy, Yahusha, is a sin sacrifice? I can't find it written anywhere in the scripture. Who says he's the Messiah? It doesn't seem to say that. Here, I'll show you where it's written. I'll show you the scripture where it's written. Bereshit starts with the letter Bet. So that we can call that the here and now. And therefore the Aleph is on the other side of the creation. So here's creation. So the Aleph creation. Aleph represents the creator, or what's on the other side of the creation event. So for him whoever wrote this alphabet is first person self-referential. This is their own story written by their own hand, which makes it holographic. Written by the hand of the author in their own declaration. So whoever wrote this is calling themselves the Aleph. It's the silent letter, so it's inferred by the fact that the heavens declare the glory of Elohim is the guy that made this place. So I can now fit this together like a puzzle, that this alphabet is speaking about the guy who put this into position. And he is going to give himself a foot that's materialized by cosmos matter to come to the earth to reveal himself in disguise as a man. In disguise, how can I say that? Because the word baged, Bet Gimel Dalet, means disguise, betray, deceive, and to cloak with a mantle of clothing as a camouflage of obscurity. So he's going to come in the camouflage of the obscurity, which looks like, revealed as Vav, the man. It happens to be the 6th letter. If you think of Vav as man, but it doesn't say it's man, it's a nail or a spike, well, that man happened to get nailed or spiked by the Roman weapon Zion. And when Pilate said, look what we did to this guy. Well, that's English. What he said was in Latin, ecce homo. Well, in Hebrew, it would be hine, that's Hanun He, which is to say, behold. And what we did to this man, you could say that's the number Vav. I'm going to call that man. And in Hebrew, that would be ish. And if I say man with a suffix ending of like it, or he, look at what we did to this thing you call your king. I might even, if I'm not speaking Hebrew correctly, I might even say with a vav at the end. So I might pronounce that to be ishu, let's say. And then when I say this, behold, this man, that's spelled either Zion He or Zion Aleph Tav. Ecce homo, behold what I've done to this man. Hine, maybe et Aleph Tav Ishu. I think that's where the name Jesus came from. Not Hail Zeus, but et Ishu. Maybe Pilate speaking, making the declaration that this guy, the other way to draw the Paleo Zion is 2 lines, like this. Well, it's actually a plowshare with spikes that you pull this direction and it drags these lines. It's like this Roman whip that they put it into his back and ripped it across. That letter Zion is the plowshare ripping open the back of that man that Pilate declared is what they did to this guy who came from the Father's house down to the earth to show to man the door back to the Father's house. And then they stuck him inside a crypt, a sepulcher, a chet, and rolled a big round rock in front of it and put the seal of the Roman seal, the yod, on it to lock it shut. And except Yeshua said, no man takes my life, I lay it down. And then you can sit there and say, yeah, well, where does it say he was a sin offering? This word right here that spells het tet yod in the Hebrew means sin. Well, that's actually het tet aleph. But when you use the suffix yod, it makes it personal. It's my. So it's my sin. It means I have incurred guilt. It's also the word for sin offering, which is to say this offering has incurred or taken my guilt for me to absolve me of guilt so that I can be cleansed and find favor. And you can look right here in the dictionary and find under the word het tet and het tet aleph all those meanings of that word. So I can look back and say, wait a minute. The guy who is my sin offering, cleansing me so that I can find favor, Pilate just declared is the guy that they ripped apart, which is the guy who came Bet Gimel Dalet disguised from the Father's house, giving himself the foot to walk down here, though he knew this was going to happen, so that we could find our way walking back through him to the house of the Father. And if this is the primordial word written from before the creations of the heaven and the earth, because it's the thing that said on day 4 the sun, moon, and stars, day 5 is fish and birds, on day 6 is animal, man, day 7 Shabbat. This is the to-do list, which was planned from before the beginning. So that makes this list older than even the creation. And because these are the Moedim walking in Pesach, Haggadah, Matzot, Shavuot, Yom Teruah, Yom Kippur, Sukkot, and Shemini Atzeret, then these festivals declare the pattern by which his Son is revealed. And if you change the pattern, if you change the Moedim, the festivals, and give us Christmas, Easter, Halloween, Valentine's Day, different pattern, different message. If you change Yom HaShabbat to the first day and to the seventh, you've eliminated the Zion, which is a picture of the crucifixion outside the fence, and you've eliminated the Zadi, which is a picture of the Ark of the Covenant and of the resurrection that you get for choosing the kingdom of Yod-Vavhe, taking his Torah to your heart, bearing the fruit, being mindful that the fruit you bear, you're all going to have to eat together and you're all going to suffer the consequences, so you better have mercy on one another and have just scales of balance, because everybody's going to profit or everybody's going to lose. And the hope set before you is the resurrection. So where is it written that that man 2,000 years ago is the Messiah? The word Mashiach, Mem, Shin Yod Het, is translated Messiah, or anointed, which certainly means that. But Mem is the place or an article of use. Like, for example, the word garden is Gimel Nun, Gan. If you put Mem in front of it, it's Mogan, which is shield. Well, a garden is something guarded. How do you guard it? With a shield. A shield is the device which does the guarding. So when you put a Mem in front of it, it's either the place or the vessel that does the job. What's Shin Yod Het? It means to communicate. It's a conversation. So here's the conversation put into tangible form. That's like this Aleph Bet, which is the communication of the Creator declaring himself and how he would relate to his people, put into human form. Well, that's John 1:1. In the beginning was this word. And this word, through which was projected his Ava, his Aleph Bet Hey, his desire revealed, and he laid out the entire universe as to this structure. And then this word became human. This word became human with a foot to walk the earth, revealing to man the door to how to get back to the house of the Father. Well, this is Yeshua's message. And then they put him to the weapon, put him in a tomb as my sin offering. So I can look at Tovia Singer in the face or anybody else that wants to deny that that guy was prophesied and say, here it is. It's in the Aleph Bet. And anybody will tell you that a translation can be messed with, that, gee, did the scribe, the line pens of the scribe, did they do it correctly? I don't know. But here it is in the very Aleph Bet, not messed with. And then when somebody says, oh, well, but the Aleph Bet maybe was messed with, maybe it's of human derivation, and it's like, it's not so, because I can show you, here's the Moedim, the 7 Moedim of Leviticus 23 locks in. There's the Yom HaShabbat. Here's him coming down with intention, and Resh Shin Tav is him coming back with the purpose. And then if there's another question, I can show you Daniel 12, which if we have time I'll show you, and then I can show you Psalm 119, where it correlates all 22 letters in sequence, boom, 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 to something David saw. And so it means that there was 22 letters. There's not 23, like they said, there's 2 letters I, and there might be 26 or 27. It's like blah, blah, there can be whatever. But here it is, fitting the pattern. So I can have absolute confidence that though the Christians might have messed it up, the Jews might have messed it up, the scribes might have messed it up, I can have absolute confidence in this pattern. And then, okay, I've showed you the days of creation, the Moedim, the Mishkan, and the Beatitudes. And I was thinking, well, there's 4 there. And 7 is the holy number. Maybe there's 7 places. So I started looking through the scriptures to try to find, where can I find cryptically or blatantly evidence of this pattern? I went way past 7. Well, maybe there's 12. I found 2, 3, 400, and it's close to 500. I stopped counting. I could show you Daniel 9:24. That's a real easy one. The point is, there's a message in this pattern of 7, and there's this other pattern of 22. Interestingly enough, if I take the Aleph Bet and say, well, 7 means to swear a vow. It's an oath.
Go there.
Okay, so if I'm going to swear a vow, to swear a vow is the number 7. It's also the word for oath. It's also the curse you get for breaking the oath. It also means to be filled to overflowing, which sets up the phrase where Yahuwah says that I give, my measure is good measure, pressed down, packed together, and overflowing. All that tells you this, which is the word for vow, which is the number 7. It's all the same meaning of the same word. Okay, we have the 22 pieces of the alphabetic sequence. If you look in Exodus 25, where he talks about how to make the menorah, he says, okay, there's supposed to be 3 of these branches coming out of the center, and there's supposed to be 3 cups. And there's supposed to be 4 in the middle one. And then 3 on each of these. Have you ever seen it drawn like that?
No.
What you probably have seen is 3 cups on the arms. And 4 maybe on this one. The same word for cup is also knob. Same word. Concave, convex. Which is it? Now let me ask you a question. Just playing around. If you had a lamp with a wick in it, with oil, and that oil started to run dry, or you're going to trim the wick, don't you have to snuff out that wick in order to trim it? But what if you had 3 cups for each lamp? You could trim one and have the other one burning, so the lamp would never go out. So what if the menorah actually had 3 with 3 wicks, but it said there was 1 reflector behind it to shine the light forward? Maybe. The Jews didn't make it that way, but what the heck? They don't even know who their own Messiah is. We can't look to them for everything. The point is, if there was 3, 3, 3, 4, 3, 3, 3, then there was 22 little bowls with 22 wicks. Oh boy. And that means you've got 22 divided by 7, which equals 3.14.
Yeah.
Which is pi. which has to do with a circle in the radius, and this word for radius of a circle is kufav, which is the word hope or tikva, or expectation, or it designates a certain zone. And so back here where you have this pillar of fire over the Ark of the Covenant, pillar of smoke billowing. Boy, that almost looks like the question mark and exclamation point over the Ark of the Covenant. You got a question? Hey, look, right here. He could have drawn a big arrow. It's the same kind of a thing. So what I'm saying is that once you start playing around with these Hebrew words, you're seeing all these pictures and patterns which all seem to validate the thing, the same thing. So if you have a vow, which is 22 things broken into 7 things, boy, that almost sounds like the alphabet letters. And I can sit here and say, well, I showed you where, if I take out the aleph and say, look at the word bet gimel dalet, hey vav zayin, het tet yod, kaf lamed mem, nun samik ayin. I could start breaking things down and then reading the words that are spelled in the natural sequence, and the entire story is there. I'm absolutely convinced. Thanks to Pilate for saying, behold this man. It proves that guy who walked the earth 2,000 years ago is the very one. But for Bet Gimel Dalet, what's the matter with them crazy Jews? They can't even recognize their own Messiah. He came in disguise. Bet Gimel Dalet. He even said, hey, you guys, who do people say I am? Oh, I think you're John the Baptist or Elijah, blah, blah. Who do you say I am? Peter, Cephas. Oh, he said in English, I don't know what it was in Hebrew, you're the Christ, the Son of the living God. Hey, you didn't figure that out. Flesh has not revealed this to you. It must have been the Ruach telling you. It must have been the Ruach.
Like
that means
Father in heaven revealed it to you.
But that means Peter didn't figure it out. That means nobody could figure it out. That means it had to be by divine revelation of special secret insight. It was not because any old Joe could have figured out who he was. It's another proof that he came Bet Gimel Dalet in disguise, which proves that the alphabet is talking about him just by that conversation. And then Pezadi literally is the word pizza, which means open mouth, to detonate. So a pizza is scattered little pieces that you throw all around. That's the word pizza. And when he went up to the mount and gave the sermon on the mount, it says, he went up to the mount and seen the crowds, and he sat down, he opened his mouth. Why does it say he opened his mouth? You never say, oh, the guy opened his mouth. I think it said he opened his mouth specifically because if you know Hebrew, you go, that's Pezadi. Those are 2 letters that come in the natural sequence order. Pezadi, opened his mouth, which is locking us in to Pezadi. What happened? Pezadi, Zadi is the resurrection, so something about his words bring life. So here's my point about this thing being a fractal model. If he created the entire, which is why I mentioned Mandelbrot Sentinel, if he created the universe by these words, if he himself is, if this word is the lens by which we look through to see him, okay, so the unfathomable infinite one is fathomed with a finite perspective by our finite minds by looking through this alphabetic word. Because of this sequence, or through this sequence, our nephesh was made. So the nurturing of our nephesh is through the feeding of this alphabet. Every word he spoke feeds us unto Mem Nun, taking his words to heart and bringing us to life. But that's only one aspect of life. There's another aspect of life behind this veil, which is resurrection unto Kuf Resh Shin Tov, which is when he comes back unto eternity, which is a whole nother. See, the letter Kuf is a sun on the horizon or a monkey's arm, which is this long reach. So it's the back of the head, it's the footprints of that which follows you, like the word Yaakov. It's that which comes way in the distance. So Mem Nun is a revitalizing of life right now, if we take his words to heart introspectively. Zadi is the hope set before us, which is unto eternity. When he went to prepare a place, as he said, he's going to come back. So here you have this picture of like this exclamation point right here. But then the kuf is also this billowing. So when Izadi sprouted from the dead and he ascended up into the heavenlies, the Melachim said he's coming back. He's going to gather his friends, which Revelation is a picture of, and gather them up and come right back down to where he lifted off from. That's a prophecy embedded in the alphabet. It's not Christian.
Amen.
It's Yahuwah. It's the one who said this is what it will be, and it will certainly be, because where he says Aleph Tav, I believe that then what Aleph Tav is mentioning is this full gamut of this whole story, which happens to be incarnated in the man, Yod-Heh Vav Shinai, Yeshua. And so the Aleph Tav does mean him, but it's more than him, and if you can say that, it's the progressive story of how the whole thing has to happen. Now then, if you could say, well, this whole thing is a story of what has to happen, so that we can look through into this alphabet and behold Elohim, which is otherwise can't be even comprehended, but by this alphabet we can comprehend him to the extent that he fit our mind and our nephesh and our being and our circumstances of life to engage like a hand in the glove. And if Yeshua himself is the pinnacle embodiment of this whole word, well, he said Yeshua is his B'nai, his son, but so is Israel. In fact, he said Ephraim is his firstborn son, which means we can step it down to another fractal level and say, well, this is the story of Israel. If this is the story of Israel, where is Israel today? Who is Israel? My son has to embody Echad with this pattern and project the truth about who is Yod-Heh Vav Heh, which is just like Yahusha mapped it out, which is just like the Hey, the Torah tells us, which is just like the other Hey, the Ruach, leads us into the truth. It all has to be the same picture. So if this is the same picture of Israel, where's Israel now? Well, Israel got sent into the tomb in Egypt, which is a model of Israel being sent into the tomb of the dispersion. And when is 3 days and 3 nights later, that just like Yeshua came to life out of the grave, just like at the end of our lives, the hope set before us, the ultimate resurrection is us coming back to life. But if this is a model of Israel, where does Israel come back to life? Now you have to read the prophecies. You go to Ezekiel 36:23, Yod-Heh Vav Heh says, you guys profaned my land. I warned you, I kicked you out, I dispersed you. And where you went, you defiled and desecrated my name in the ayin, the understanding, the eyes of the nations amongst whom you were scattered. And I will make kadosh, make pure, like he really is, like this, all these letters are him. He's going to, as it were, I'll paraphrase here, I think he said he's going to live up to his fabled reputation. You read the champion of Israel in the Old Testament, all these different stories, about wiping out hundreds and hundreds of armies and throwing hail down, and they wake up dead, 80,000 soldiers. I mean, all these type of exploits. There's verses where it says, where is it? You guys haven't been paying attention. He said, I will hide and see if anybody recognizes, like, oh, this is in the Song of Moses. Wonder how long it's going to take him to realize that, why aren't I doing what I said I'd do? Gee, you think he failed us? No, we failed him. Nehemiah said so. Daniel said so. Moshe said so. Yeshua said, it's all through. We have failed him. So when we come back to these words, Deuteronomy 30, take them to heart, Memnun, then he will listen when we listen, and he will restore us the same way that the dead stick of Aharon blossomed. Not because it's the end of the world, it's the end of the coma. It's the end of us being derelict so that we can kohen to the world the great Shem Gadol of Yahuwah Kadosh. That's our job. And in Ezekiel 36:23, when you guys do that, then I will step in and light this thing up, my paraphrase, that he will restore his favor and being the champion of us the way he's always wanted to be, the way he promised to be, that none of our former generations allowed him to be because we refused to listen, because we're being taught by bad preachers who don't seem to know this. But this is what he said. So we could choose to be the generation who listens, who regards his words, who glorifies him, and simply does what he says. And it's like, oh no, there's the law. Here's the word for law is spelled het kuf. It means to imitate. It means to inscribe, like inscribed in stone. That's the law. Chok. Well, wait a minute. Het is this fence. And didn't I just go through the fact that this is the kingdom of Yod He Vav He, of pure truth? And the kuf is the pillar of fire, pillar of smoke. Gosh, that almost looks like a lit treasure chest. But it's translated law. Chok. If the treasure chest of the kingdom of heaven and his presence in our midst is to be found as we simply keep his instructions and imitate his character, the way Yahusha came and modeled it, why are we told to leave it alone? Because our enemies don't want us going there. It's our enemies that's lying to us. It's our treasure chest of revitalization and life. The sprout, even if it was dead, it can resprout. That's the way he made it. And all we have to do is choose him, repeat his instructions, and take it to heart, and then bear the fruit of light and voice that he can look at, put into the scales, and say, when you guys do mishpat, the scales of balance, you do zadikah, righteousness, and the scales of balance will mean that all the corruption that everybody else is doing, the wealth of the wicked will flow into you to fill up the scales of balance and make it equity so that you get zadikah, which means victory, deliverance, and salvation. If we do the mishpat of zadikah, which is righteousness, we get victory, deliverance, and salvation. And it has to work because that's the structure of the entire universe. But the bad guys in Hollywood will show you that the tough guys and wealthy guys win. It ain't so. We've been lied to keep us away from the words of truth, because soon as we come back to the truth, the teeter-totter shifts and they lose it all. They want us to think that there's going to be a dragon and a tribulation that's going to burn us up and chew us up, and we better go hide in caves because we got nobody listening to us. That's what we've been told. I've been taught that my entire life. I can go back and read the same words in Daniel about this beast that's going to tear things up and chew it up. And as I was looking at it, I realized it's talking about publishing houses. This dragon is going to change the words and tear it up and lie to us to extinguish our hope. If we don't have hope, hatikva, we're not trusting him, so it can't happen. If we come back to the words of hope that we truly believe what he said, it's kind of like he's working with us. If we hope for what he said, that it allows him to do what he said he wanted to do, and he's waiting for a generation to do it. And it's coming back to these Hebrew letters where the story is there, and it has to work. It can't fail because it's the fabric of the universe. It's his very kingdom. Yeshua himself is the embodiment of all these matters. There's no way around it. I think it's an incredible insight.
Hallelujah.
Hallelujah.
And nobody who denies Yeshua has access to this understanding. Because in Daniel 12, Daniel was told to hide the words.
It's on video.
It's on video, I know.
Numerous people take
Daniel was
pictures.
told to hide the words
And
in
share.
the book until the time of the end. Until the time. Ayin Dalet, Ayin Tav. Until the time of Kuf Zadi. And Kuf Zadi can mean the awakening. If Pei Zadi is this open mouth, Kuf is almost like this shackle around your neck, or this choke. It could be a necklace. It's a picture of many different things. But until the time that the shackle is released, hide the words and seal the book until the time. Okay, until the time what? Eyeball. Understand this is a door. Understand the door, and this is understand Tav. Well, if the letter Tav is the contract deal, the covenant that we signed up to, it's the vow that our forefathers signed us up for. Thank you very much. Abraham, Yitzhak, Yaakov, Moshe, and the rest of it. Thank you, because it was a great deal. Shalom. Sorry to keep going so long. You missed it.
I'm waiting for you to collapse.
Are you coming Monday?
Oh, no, he's gaining
I'm
energy.
just getting.
He's getting started.
Well,
He can go till 2 in the morning like
in the
this.
interest of time, I'm trying to talk a little quickly. Here's the point. If this is the Aleph Vav Tav, the letters of the alphabet, that articulate the terms of the contract, and the understanding of the terms of the contract is contingent upon ironing the Dalet. Dalet is a door. Dalet is a decision. Dalet is like this threshold where here's the door. You can choose this or that. What door? If Daniel was told to hide the words and seal the book, Ayin Dalet, Ayin Tav. I'm now breaking it down into the Paleo letters. Ayin Dalet, understand the door. And this word is translated to mean until. This same word witness is the root of the word for mem vav ayin dalet, which is moed, which is the appointed times.
That's right.
Yeah.
So it's also, if you put a yod at the end, it's adi, which means choice best jewel, to be ornamented. So for Yahweh to say, these are my moedim, he's saying, these are the choice best jewels by which I have ornamented myself. It's the best stuff I could invent. I have decked myself up with such ornamentation, and the Christian church that goes, are you kidding me? That stinks. I want to dress up like an Egyptian or an Assyrian. That's what Israel was guilty of. Christmas, Easter, Halloween, anything pagan, but nothing that has to do with those 7 Moedim. Really. And yet we know and love him, our dear Father. I have adorned myself with these Moedim. No, thank you. I'll do anything for you, but I'm not going to rest on your day. Really. Really. That's the status of our culture. Christian culture as well as American culture. We want nothing to do with what he thinks is his best ornamentation, which testify of his identity. And if that's not enough, Yeshua claimed to be the door. So if you really understand the door, you'd understand that he can't be different than the testimony embedded within the Moedim. So if your Jesus Christ is a different voice of testimony than what the Moedim testify of that we just went through, he's a different guy. He's not Yeshua, the Mashiach, the Word incarnate, the communication made tangible that was sent from Abba's house to us to show us how to get back. So if you have Jesus Christ who has different Moedim, different testimony, different ornamentation, Christmas balls and Easter eggs of fertility symbols, instead of the 7 Moed of Yod He Vav He, you've got the wrong Messiah. You've got the wrong Savior. This is critical stuff.
That's what the Jews don't want.
That's what the Jews don't want. And when they say, you show me where he changed the day, well, it doesn't matter. It's like, it does matter. They're right about saying you're taking our Jewish children and making them Jews for Jesus. Can't happen. If your Jesus is the archetypal icon who represents the elimination and the changing of all this. That's why I don't use the JC word, because for me, Yahusha or Yeshua, see, the word Shua means a cry for help. Yahshua is calling out to Yah for help. Yahusha, the word Shah is save, redeem, help, deliver. So Yahusha is Yahu, the word Yah or Hevav He is the verb to be. So it's he who will cause to exist the deliverance. So when you call for help, that's Yahshua, make deliverance here. Okay, he will send Yahusha. So it's just grammatics, term. But nevertheless, if Pilate said, look what we did to this et Ishu, that might have become Greek, I-E-S-U, and then they add another S because that's Greek masculine singular, Isus, maybe. Doesn't matter. They didn't recognize him, but they certainly played into the prophecy that's embedded within this Aleph Bet. So when I saw this Aleph Bet, I realized I must keep these Moedim. The same way he said, eat unleavened bread for a week, and so the Torah will be in your mouth. Walk these 7 Moed, and so the kingdom will be right there where you walk, under your feet. You're in the kingdom. Yeshua even said, kingdom of heaven is at hand. What did he mean by that? That's why this little graphic here, you got the eternal part, the Aleph through Hey, this is what I'm going to do. Then you got the Resh Shin Tav, the part coming back. But in this present darkness, of Vav through Kuf are these transitional letters, right? The Vav is the bridge, the crossover, and the Kuf is raising up. So that's, joining the heavenly realm to the earthly realm. But within the realm of darkness, you've got the Moedim. Het Tet Yod, Pesach, blue. Kaf Lamed, Torah, purple. Mem Nun, Shavuot, the red. You got the creator, the Torah creator who expressed, the Yod who expressed himself, Hey, with the Torah. Then the Hey, the Torah incarnate, Mem Nun as Adam. And then Yeshua giving us the one who leads us into the truth. The next Hey, Samak Ayin Pei. Well, there's the 6 Moedim and then Shemini Atzeret. The word Shemin is 8. It's also the word for oil. It also means consider, count, evaluate, assess this. So when there's the 10 bridesmaids, 5 of which you had oil, they had shemen. That's the word for oil. Well, if 5 had shemen, they had oil, that could be read as they had the consideration of evaluating what's going on, and the other 5 didn't. Because what? Shem, Shin Mem is the word name. It's also fame, renown, reputation. All this stuff is his Shem. The 7 Moedim are his Shem. Yom HaShabbat is his Shem. It's his stuff. And so for the Christian church at large to say, we got nothing to do with that. You have nothing to do with the very one you claim to be the representative of? Well, then you got the wrong guy that you're representing. Yeshua in the book of Revelation said, anybody who makes or develops or propagates falsehood has no place in my kingdom. No place in my kingdom. That means if you change the testimony, you're not his.
I think we lost you on the little guy, but that's fine.
Okay.
We're still recording elsewhere. Yep.
So if you're not his, I am not personally saying that if you don't keep the Moedim, you're going to burn in hell. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that if you think you're a Christian, you're going to burn in hell. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that you have no place in his kingdom if you don't choose to enter his kingdom and take his words to heart. I'm not saying that. You have to ask, what are these words telling me? I'm just pointing at what these words are saying. You can figure it out for yourself. It's serious stuff. Because Yeshua said, half the bridesmaids don't get in. And yet, it's taught all you have to do is believe. Didn't all 10 believe? All 10 were there. All 10 were waiting. All 10 were expecting. All 10 had their oil in their lamp. Oh, they just didn't have enough oil. What about the blood? If it was really the Holy Spirit, why didn't the 5 that have it just lay hands on the 5 that didn't and say, be imparted, poof, now we all have oil, let's all go in. That's the model, right? But it didn't happen. Why? Because something's wrong. Something is wrong with the teaching, with the model. Anyway, the upshot of the whole thing is there's something in this language which reveals the truth. There's something in this language which is who we're supposed to be and how we're supposed to think. And if we ponder the spelling of Hebrew words that he's given us in his Torah, or just read the dictionary. Just go to Israel and read a road sign. There's something about the spelling of words which is engaging him the way he revealed himself. And there's a benefit, a merit to any degree that you do that, even if you just contemplate the alphabetic letters. So if Yeshua claimed to be this door, then this means understand that Yeshua, this is the way I'm reading this, understand that Yeshua, the true Messiah, is the one described when you understand these letters. And the letters are not just ox. Here, I'll tell you what the pictographic letters mean. Aleph is ox. Bet is house. Gimel is camel. Dalet is door. Hey is behold or the, like a window. Vav is nail. It's a conjunction like and. Zion is a weapon. Het is fence. Tet is something round. They say snake. It's like a full basket. Yod is a working, grabbing hand. Kaf is an open palm of a hand. Lamed means teach and learn. Mem is water, like a womb. Nun, the word dag is fish. Nun is like a fish. It jumps out. It's this vitality, this springing, living, multiplying thing. Samek is a support, like a trellis. Ayin means eyeball. It's to comprehend, understand, weigh, and balance. Pei is a mouth. that which opens. Zadi is a fishhook or a sprout, like Aaron's rod that budded. Kuf is the back of the head, sun on the horizon, that thing in the distant future. Resh means head, like somebody's head or the head of a mountain. Hey, Resh is the word har for mountain. It's like, hey, look at that thing that's sticking up the promontory. Sheen is teeth and fire, that which consumes. And Tav is a marker, a sign. That's the meaning of the letters. That's what those words actually mean. And to put it all together and be able to read this whole thing saying it's identifying the Messiah, but not in Christian terms. And by looking at these same letters and seeing the Moedim and seeing the Sabbath day and seeing that every word in the entire Torah is somehow an expression of these are kind of like the Father himself gave us his DNA so that his Son could be echad with the same DNA. So the same DNA that Yeshua has, which is the same of his Father, is the same as B'nai Israel, is the same of any of us, as we think about, as we talk, as we contemplate, as we consider these words. It's him. It's not a foreign language. It's that which we are composed of and will bring back. The word shafah, shin pei hey, is the language, which is the tongue, which is referring to Hebrew, and it also means to restore to health and cure from lunacy. Lip, language, tongue, it's referring to Hebrew, not the lashon of other languages, but it's the shafah of the Hebrew language. So I think if we study this Hebrew, it will restore our minds. It will hopefully keep anybody from getting any kind of dementia or Alzheimer's. Learn Hebrew! I was starting to spell the word Shemin. Shin Mem is name, fame, renown, reputation, which is all that. Shemin is oil. Well, Mem Nun means what? From where? From what? But it also means to count. So this whole thing means count or assess or appraise the value of. Mem Nun is mene, tiklu farsi. Mene is to count, weigh, measure, number. So if they didn't have Shemin, did they not have any consideration of really where they were at with truth? For what it's worth, just so you know, this word Shemin, which is count, appraise, and evaluate, this other word, ayin resh kaf, Erik, as in Eriktology, ayin resh kaf means to consider, to count, to measure, to weigh, to assess, to determine its value, to put it in order and row, to assemble it in such a way like these graphics where you can actually see it, appreciate it, and know what it's worth.
That's what your name means?
That's the word Erik.
And your parents knew that when they named you.
Well, the interesting thing, if you look at Aleph Resh Kaf, it means...
It happens that way. It's a miracle.
Aleph Resh Kaf means long-winded and so it depends on how you spell the word.
Surely answer question.
Yeah. Everything you said, you can summarize it in Revelation 22, verse 13. I am the Aleph and the Tav, the first and the last, the beginning and the end. So when you started that, I went here and I found out, there's my answer.
So when he mentions Genesis 1, Bereshit bara Elohim Aleph Tav, do you know that word is never translated?
That's right.
Why? They don't know what to do with it. They don't know what it means. It's used as this pointed of a grammatical device, but they don't. When I say they, I'm talking about, the Jewish sages, the Christians. What do you do with it? So everything I've just tried to articulate here with a certain degree of proof is to saying, okay, Daniel, hide the words and seal the book until the time of Kuf Zadi, the end. So you think, oh, that's the end of the world. It doesn't say the end of the world. Until the end of something. The end of the diaspora, the end of the curse, the end of the coma that we've been under, the end of the delusion, the end of the lies, the end of the overlording by our enemies. How long did it take him to implement the Exodus? When he started the plague, some people say it was maybe a year or something, right? The number mem is 40, and today at the congregation there, they were talking about how that's this womb of he didn't say womb, but it was this place of transition.
Yeah.
Mem is the number 40.
Sure.
Nun is 50, which is Jubilee. So something about this 40, 50, and it's like, okay, How much time do you want me to keep going? A little bit more or no time?
What I'd like to do is take a break for a little while here, because we've been going for a while, take a potty break and things like that, stop recording for a minute, and then come back again, because I think you could go again for a while.
He hasn't fallen over yet.
Yeah, so let's take a break right now, and
Here, I'll tell you what we'll talk about. Has anybody never heard of this?
Go ahead and hit it.
The 2000